Boys and girls, we're going to watch a video now on comparing and ordering integers. So please open up to the second page in your notes packet that says 9-2 compare and order integers at the top. So I kind of have a little crocodile picture at the bottom to remind us of our different symbols in case you forgot what they look like. Remember, when I have my less than symbol, it's a symbol that looks like this, where the smaller number is going to be on the left side and the bigger number is going to be on the right side. When I'm going to be talking about the greater than symbol, it's like this one over here, where the bigger number is on the left side. So again, I have the crocodiles because the opening should always point towards the bigger number because it wants to eat the bigger number. So let's get started real quick with a short review of what integers are. So just to remind you, an integer is the set of whole numbers and their opposites. So it's both positive and negative numbers. Remember, 0 is that weird number in the middle. It's neither positive nor negative, but it's still considered an integer. So what we have is we need to remember that numbers on a number line increase in value as you move from left to right. So if I have numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on my number line, as I move from left to right, my numbers are going to increase in value. Now, when I'm dealing with negative numbers, it's going to be a little bit more complicated to understand. Now, you might remember from our number lines that we drew in class the other day, I might have something like -4, then -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, and so on. If you notice, my numbers, when they're negative, are actually almost counting backwards. The closer you get to 0, the bigger the numbers actually are. So when I look at this, again, -4 is going to be my smallest number, and it's going to keep getting bigger as I travel this way on my number line. So my negative numbers kind of follow the opposite pattern. So what I need you to write down in your notes is at the top of it right now, I would like you guys to write down this one sentence that I have written on here. So the farther left on a number line, the smaller the number. So add that to the top of your notes packet. So there's a little room up at the top. The farther left on a number line, the smaller the number. So if I look at my numbers, -4 and -8. Well, the one that's farther left is going to be smaller. Well, -8 is farther to the left, so I know that -8 is going to be smaller than -4. Since it's smaller, I would put my less than symbol like this in the middle. So -8 would be less than -4. Again, when you're dealing with negative numbers, it's almost like the opposite things happen. Even though you normally think 8 is bigger than 4, because it's negative, -8 is farther from 0, so -8 is actually the smaller number of the two. The next thing I want you guys to write on your notes packet is right below that one sentence you wrote, you're now going to write this sentence. The farther right on the number line, the bigger the number. So jot that down into your notes. You should have 2 sentences of notes written up at the top right now. The farther right on a number line, the bigger the number. So the farther right on a number line, the bigger the number. Again, let's look at these points I've drawn on my number line. I've drawn a -7 and I've drawn a -1. So I have -7 and I have -1, and I want to figure out, well, which one of those two is bigger? Well, which one's farther right on the number line? -1 is farther to the right, so I know -1 is bigger. I need my symbol to have the opening pointing towards the bigger number, so I put a symbol like this. Now, I could also write that -1 is greater than -7. These are going to be the same exact thing, because if you notice, both times the opening is pointing towards the -1. So something that a kid told me a couple years ago that they found really helpful was they think about comparing and ordering integers by thinking about like thermometers and like temperatures outside. So kind of think when we're in our really, really cold winter weather, is it colder outside when it's -12 or -20? Well, both of them are pretty cold, but when I think about how cold numbers are, or temperatures are, a -20-degree day is much colder than a -12-degree day. So because of that, -20 is the colder number, so -20 would then be the smaller number of the two. The lower the temperature, the colder it is outside and the smaller the number it is. So again, negative numbers it's the opposite of what you would do with positive numbers. What I want us to do is I want us to compare these sets of numbers. So below the number line, we're going to write down these sets. So write down a 4 and then write down a 9. Now, these are whole numbers with positive numbers, so this should be something you're very familiar with. Is 4 or 9 bigger? We want to figure that out. So is it better to have 4 or 9 of something? Well, if it's something you like, 9 is the bigger number, so that's what you're going to want. So again, on my number line, 4 is farther to the left, so that would be my smaller number. So I'd put that 4 is less than 9. So please write that down in your notes packet. You should have this example written down. Now let's think about a positive 3 and a negative 3. Okay, write down positive 3 and then write down negative 3. Let's look at our number line. Again, the farther right on a number line, the bigger my numbers are. So which one's farther to the right, positive 3 or negative 3? Positive 3 is farther to the right, so positive 3 would be my bigger number. So I would write down positive 3 is greater than negative 3. Finally, let's look at some examples now with negative numbers, because those are normally what's the most confusing and complicated for students. So what I have is if I have a negative 7 and I have a negative 10, I need to compare these two numbers. The farther left I go, the smaller my numbers are. The farther right I go, the bigger my numbers are. So when I look at this, 7 is more to the right, my negative 7 I mean. So even though 7 normally is less than 10, negative 7 is actually bigger than negative 10. I like to sometimes think about it in terms of money. Is it better to owe somebody $7 or to owe somebody $10? You owe less money if you owe them $7, so the negative 7 is actually a greater amount of money for you than a negative 10 would be. So again, the farther, just think about a number line to figure out which one's bigger and smaller. So you should have these 3 problems written on your notes pad paper now with all of the correct answers. We're going to do one more thing today on our notes before we end the video for today. Sometimes we have to look at multiple numbers and order them from least, which is smallest, to greatest, which is largest. So when I look at all of my numbers, I have a negative 2, a positive 9, a negative 8, and a 2. Let's write these down, and then we're going to put these in the order from smallest to largest. Well, when I look at this, I always know my positive numbers are bigger than my negative numbers. So I'm going to put my positive numbers, I'm going to move over here on this side. I know you can't move them on your paper, but that's fine. I'm going to put my negative numbers over here. Because again, I know everything that's negative is going to be smaller than anything that's positive. So now I need to figure out, well, what's smaller, negative 8 or negative 2? Well, I'm going to look at my number line. Negative 8 is farther to the left, so it goes negative 8, and then negative 2 is the correct order to place those two numbers. So I'd go negative 8 and then negative 2. Now I'm going to look at 2 and 9 on my number line. Well, 2 comes first, then the 9 comes next to my number line. So my correct order from smallest to largest should look like this. We're going to review this a lot in class tomorrow because this can be kind of complicated and confusing for some students. So if you're kind of confused by what we went over in the video, we'll talk about it in class tomorrow and you'll be an expert by the time you leave. Right now it just started pouring outside, so hopefully no one was outside for gym class and you guys are staying nice and dry. I'll see you in class.